Welcome everybody. On behalf of Rajalakshmi Institutions, I take great privilege in welcoming Dr. Lance Fung here. He has uh, really graciously accepted to deliver his knowledge in research papers. So how to create impact through research papers. So many of us are pursuing a research, and many of us are doing a lot of research and focusing on publication. So this session will be definitely useful to all of us. So it will give us an international perspective. And Sir is a highly active member in IEEE. So he's also a candidate for director-elect for the Asia Pacific region, that is Region 10. So we really congratulate him. And to have such a person amidst us, it's a really honor for us. So I now leave it to Dikshana to introduce the guest. Dikshana, please take over.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to welcome Dr. Lance Chun Che Fung, Emeritus Professor, to be with us today. Dr. Fung was born in Hong Kong and trained as a marine radio and electronic officer from the year 1972 to 1978. He graduated with a BSc degree with first class honors in maritime studies at the year 1981 and a Master of Engineering degree in System Test Technology in the year 1982 from the University of Wales. His PhD degree was awarded by the University of Western Australia in 1994 with a thesis on the application of artificial intelligence techniques of electrical power system engineering under the supervision of the late Professor Kit Po Wong. He taught at the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Singapore Polytechnic at the year 1982 to 1988, and at the School of Electrical and Computer Engineering, Curtin University of Technology in the year 1989 to 2003. He joined in Murdoch University in 2003 and he was appointed as Emeritus Professor in 2015. In 2017, he was awarded an honorary PhD degree in Information Technology by Wolailak University, Thailand, in recognition of his contributions towards the development and advancement of their research and postgraduate programs. He held positions as Academic Program Chair, Associate Dean of Research, Postgraduate Research Director, and Director of the Center for Enterprise Collaborative in Innovative System. He has supervised over 30 postgraduate and doctoral students, and he have published over 330 academic articles in international journals and conference proceedings in the areas of neural network, intelligent systems, computational intelligence, cybernetics, electrical power systems, image processing, data mining, machine learning, knowledge management, education, and web technology. He has been dedicated in the volunteer in the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineering for over 2 decades. He has served in many positions in the executive committees of technical society chapters, WA section, Australia Council, and R10EXCOM. He has been a member of the Board of Governors in the IEEE Systems, Man and Cybernetic Society in the year 2010 to 2015, and served as a chair of the IEEE New Initiative Committee NIC, Conference Quality Committee, IEEE Technical Program Integrity Committee, and currently as IEEE R10 Chair of Educational Activities Committee in the year 2019 to 2020. He has guided countless PhD students and published many papers. We gladly welcome you, sir. Thank you for joining with us.
Thank you so much and good morning. And thank you, Dichana, for the invitation. So now I'm going to share my screen. So let me know that you can see my screen. Is it quite okay now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very able to see.
Okay, thank you so much. So if you can see my screen, I'm going to take off the camera. So what you can see is the background shot of our skyline in the Perth, Western Australia. Well, we have excellent weather today. It's a bit cold. And so I hope you can concentrate, take a look well at my slides. Well, I must first of all, well, acknowledge and thank you very much for the invitation. It's truly my pleasure and honor I'm able to speak with you that are over thousands of kilometers away. Well, on one hand, the COVID-19 is causing a lot of disruption and also changes in the near future. And also a lot of us are facing a lot of challenges. But nevertheless, I do believe that life still go on, and then I still believe that we have a better tomorrow because we have a better technology and better understanding. Well, the topic of today is planning, writing, and creating impact for your research papers. Well, I must confess that I'm not really an expert in this area in the sense that, well, there are a lot of people, they've done much better than me. Well, no doubt that I have quite a good number of students, a good number of a PhD student, but I must acknowledge that all those work belong to the student. But nevertheless, I can share with you that some of my observation and my experience, and also especially how the academic world is changing nowadays, well, how the expectations on the academics and on the students. So maybe so that you can better inform, so you can also do the planning accordingly as well. So what I'm doing today is just mainly as some kind of suggestion. And I wouldn't consider myself it's really the tip-top world leader in any of these topics. But I'm just hoping that I can share some of my experience. I can help you go along in the journey. Okay, I just move on to the next part. Okay, so once again, thank you for the invitations organized by Sai Krishna. He contacted me over the internet, and then one thing lead to another, so we're able to establish the contact for the talk today. I have to make a disclaimer that, well, I do use a bit of information from IEEE. In particular, as you heard from the introduction, that I have been involved with the Conference Quality Committee and also the New Initiatives Committee, and also in my role in the university, during my supervision of the student. I also have the opportunity to read a lot of papers, read a lot of research proposals. In particular, well, I'm quite familiar with the expectation from IEEE on the conference paper. I wouldn't say, I'm not able to say too much in terms of the journal papers because for different societies, they do have a different expectation. But I can speak quite with some understanding what is expectation from conference quality within IEEE point of view. And hopefully that will be useful for those who are considering for publishing papers with IEEE. So I make it quite clear, this is not a quick course on how to write a paper. I make it quite clear, because it's just within 1 hour. You know, when I know, well, writing is an art. You cannot just simply say that this is the formula, this is how you do it, and you get an excellent paper. Well, I do believe that as you go along with your academic journey, well, you should have read a lot of papers, and you should also start writing a lot as well. And we all learn along the way, and even I myself have to admit, sometimes the people can pick up, well, I have my grammatical mistake, and also maybe a better way to present what I want to say. Excuse me. So obviously this one, you have all these, you have to learn from experience. Another question is, I'm not trying to tell you that how am I going to ensure my paper being accepted. Well, I can give you some things that from the reviewers and from the conference organizers' point of view, what are the things we're looking at? And even for IEEE point of view, well, you'll be surprised to hear that, well, in IEEE, sometimes we reject the whole conference proceeding. So that is going to be the biggest disaster for any author, even for the organizers as well. There are situations that we do reject and refuse the proceeding going to be included in Explore, and there are reasons for that. So I'm going to talk about that at the latter part of my talk. And then the other one is how to make my paper have great impact. So although my title is talking about creating impact, I don't really want to give you the impression that, well, you want to play along, well, the figure so that you want to make it you got some impacts, because I know that there's some quantitative figures people are looking at. So I'm going to introduce those figures. But honestly, that I strongly discourage people just looking at those figures just for the sake of the figures. So I look at the impact from different angles. So I try to look at it from my presentation from different viewpoints as well. So in a way that I would say that my presentation is really asking more fundamental questions. And I believe that as a researcher, every one of us, well, is also a learner in life, that we should really look for the answers ourselves. But I'm just hoping that I'm providing you some pointers And I'm telling you that what other people are looking at so that you decide how you're going to make the best of your work. So the agenda for today is I'm going to give you a quick introduction to myself. In this part, I would like to show you some of the public information whereby you can get some assessment on your paper, on your credential as a researcher. Now, I'm not saying that those figures are golden rules, but I'm just simply saying that these are some of the figures people are using. So because it's very hard to compare that this researcher is better than the other researcher, this paper is better than the other paper, it's very, very hard to say that, objectively. Having said that, there are some figures they use it. So I can only share with you some of those figures people are using, and even, including the university management and also the government, the research organization, the grant giving organization, they're looking at those figures. So that is the one that you have to take into account. I'd rather go back to the fundamental question, why should I write research papers? So I want to clarify what does I mean by impact within my talk now. So I look at it from different angles. And also, I consider where to submit your paper is very important. So because to a certain extent, that will have some bearing on your impact of your paper. And also, since we talk about plans, so I'll give you some suggestion how should you really plan. Not only just to write a paper, but also write in terms, your plan should include your submissions and even your research career. And I'm going to share a little bit at the end as well. What do I mean by Australian experience? Mainly, I'm looking at it from the Australian Research Council point of view. The Australian Research Council is a government body that give out the money to support the research within Australia. They have a budget, I think last time I looked at it, around $800 million Australian. Looking at the population, we have, I wouldn't say we are very high compared to some other country, but nevertheless, from the academic and the research circles point of view, they are quite significant. People getting some of these grants are considered is more or less they have made it. Then I'll just finish off by looking at how IEEE works as a gatekeeper. That was the committee I work on as the assurance of the quality of the conference paper. So I just touch on that part, not really on the journals, etc. So in case that, you haven't, some of you may have attended some of my other talk, but if you haven't, I would say that my information are publicly available, that some of those you heard earlier on was available from my university website. You just simply search, Murdoch University profile Lance Fung, and you come to this page. And this gives you quite an overview of what I've been doing, my publication, my students, and some of my speaking engagement. I can assure you that my speaking engagement for today, is going to be put on the events and speaking program shortly. And as I said earlier on, even though that we are under lockdown, but this is, you might be surprised to hear that this is my 40th webinar I've been giving out since the beginning of May. So even I myself was really amazed with the opportunity open up within this short period of time. So where am I now? So I have been to Chennai before. I really enjoyed my time there, and I really enjoyed my breakfast with dosa. And I also visited the museum. And I went down to Pondicherry, and again, I really enjoyed it. And I live, currently I'm in the West Coast. You guys are on the East Coast. So it's not that far away, really. We can see just draw a straight line that we reaches across the Indian Ocean. But when we fly over, we just simply have to fly through some of the international connections like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, etc. Murdoch University is the second oldest university in the state of WA. We established now coming to around 50 years history now, established in 1974. Well, the oldest university is University of Western Australia, where I received my PhD degree. And we are located on the south part of the river. And the background shot, you see that I think it would be something in here that overseeing, this is the CBD area. So overseeing, this is the freeway. Two other universities in Perth, Curtin University and Idikarwan University, and also one private university, Notre Dame University. Australia is quite different compared to India. Well, I understand India, you have a large number of private university institutes and colleges, etc. But for higher education, we mainly just have two private universities. Although the government are opening up, people can be registered, the training operators as well. So my personal background, you have heard part of it as well. I always like to show some of these photos. Well, this one is in 1972. Well, sorry, 1974. Well, that was my first ship, a small cargo ship. And I always try to looking at the equipment that I compare to what we have nowadays. And this is my second ship. Well, I think this one is 1976. After 1 year, I studied in England. So the one behind me, this is the transmitter. So this one will have a power of 1 kilowatt. And then I can communicate from the ship to different parts of the world. And then I have some other receivers, etc. But even within a period of a few years, well, no doubt it's still based on a lot of the old technology, like the vacuum valves. We're working on a low frequency. Working on Morse code, believe it or not, we're working on Morse code. Well, we do have a radio telephony, but they're not as reliable as a Morse code. And then, well, you see that, but actually back in the early 70s, that we have already got the satellite beginning to come in as an emergency system. And then this is my photo when I was studying my master's degree, and then in the University of Wales, and it was in 1981. And then I started working on the microprocessors, and I developed as a part of my dissertation. And what you see on here is what we call the microprocessors development system under Hewlett-Packard. And then we're working on an 8-bit microprocessor. So more or less all the rest are history. From that point onwards, after I finished my master, I worked in Singapore, and then I migrated to Australia, and then I got a PhD scholarship. I started working with PhD for a few months in UWA, and then I accepted a teaching position in Curtin University. And then I continued my PhD by part-time, and I graduated in 1994. And then I worked in 2 universities locally in here. And then, well, in my role, in addition to the teaching and research, I also been in the administration role. And you also heard my involvement with the IEEE on the conference quality, new initiative committees, and also the technical societies, well, the system and cybernetics. So I would like to let you know that in terms of the information nowadays, well, obviously one of the questions is where can I find some papers? So obviously, if you're able to access to the subscription of IEEE, then you can access to the Explore. Otherwise, well, if you just simply as a member, you might have to pay for the subscription, and then well, that will cost you money. But on the other hand, well, nowadays, well, people may make those papers publicly available. Like in this case, well, this is the one under my university research repository. So if you go to my profile page, you'll be able to see the list of publications. If you click on that one, it will direct you to this publication. So in here, it shows that I have 334 papers in there under different categories, well, journal articles, well, non-refereed and conference paper, etc., etc. And each one of these, you can click onto it. Well, more than likely, you'll be able to get the full text or download. Although not all, because due to the copyright issue, but I think I have around 61% are all available in there. Otherwise, well, you can also refer to the other sources I can show you again later on. So this is the publication. So this is important because by making your publication widely available, you got a better chance to be cited. So this is the first point. So how are you going to make your publications accessible to the public? So that's why this leads to another type of publication now, which is what we call the open access. So when you consider sending to papers with open access, so that means that everyone can access it. They don't need to be a member. So I'm going to talk about a little bit later now. Well, when I talk about where should you submit your paper, the differentiation between the open access and the other traditional way. Another one is a thesis. Although thesis is not really the same as the paper, they're being put it in some website, etc. I remember when I first studied, well, looking at the thesis, when you want to look at other people's thesis, I have to go to the library. And then, well, I have to request, and then the librarian will have to bring out the thesis for me. Sometimes they may even ask me to put on a glove so that not to dirty the thesis. So at one time, the thesis was such a valuable asset. And then later on, well, you can pay for reprint of a thesis. Well, I remember I ordered a few when I do my PhD, ordered from USA, and then they send you a small reduced size of the thesis. But nowadays, actually, so much easier now. Well, all my student theses are available on the internet. So if you go into my profile page, go into that part, you can click and take a look any of those. You see the abstract, you see the front pages, and then you can download the full thesis. But this is the one I find is very useful for those students that are working, well, towards the PhD or even master, doing some research work. Not just limit yourself to the papers. Take a look at other people's thesis. So that, well, first of all, you see how you can learn, well, how they structure the whole thesis. Well, you can take a look in terms of how they explain the background, explain the research problem, how they put up the proposal, how they design the experiment. Sometimes you might even have the access to the data they have. So this is very important. So you can also take a look in terms of how many papers these theses have cited. So that will also provide you a very good source of the references to start off with if you are at the early stage of your research work. So from our university, well, actually we also collect information. Well, as you can see in here, repository statistic. So in here, my university tells me, well, I have 334 items, as you have seen earlier on. It tells me it has been downloaded 61,507 times, okay, 61,507 times. I'm pretty amazed with these figures as well. And then looking, well, throughout the years, well, there were some years I have a very high download, up to 2,000. And then, well, it's go down a little bit and then gradually even come up again. And then, well, it tells me 61%, well, of those have the full text inside there because they're open access. And you can see some of these papers where you can have 5,000 times being downloaded. This is the paper they talk about between learning and edutainment. Well, because this was an early stage, our university was the first one within the state of WA to propose to run the games course. And then we're looking into learning, education, learn from plays and all those things, and entertainment. And then, well, at that time, it was really a pioneer within our state. And some others were looking at a proposed study on the use of ICT and smart meter to influence, customers' behavior and attitude towards the renewable energy. So again, at one time, there was a lot of interest on the renewable energy. So that one was set around 3,000 times as well. Even the thesis, well, I mentioned already, you can download the thing. This is what you see as an example. So from our university research repository, it's made available, of the complete thesis of my student when she graduated in 2008. Currently, she's working in one of the university in Thailand. You can download the front pages. The front pages are mainly the first few pages, including the cover, including the abstract, including the acknowledgement, content page, etc. And then you can download the complete thesis if you think that this one is useful. And also even for this one, as if you can remember, this was published in 2008. And then I was amazed that even this thesis alone have close around 2,000 downloads and 566 hits. And you can see that over the years, actually there was some years, over hundreds or so download on this thesis. And then you're getting a bit quiet. And lately it suddenly come up again. So I don't know where was the download being done. Now, okay, so that is the information within the university. So I would say that that was the first part, in creating the impact. It may help you because by making your work publicly accessible, you will definitely get people getting to know you and get to know your work. Then, not necessarily that you have the university provides such a platform. So you can also take a look from the public domain. I have my information on Google Scholar. You just simply check Google Scholar, but you look for Chun Che Fung. That's the name I always use because this is my name on my passport. So you can take a look at those papers. But this is the paper that I published with my supervisor during my PhD, and then it was 1993. And you can see this one is the most cited paper, close to 500 times. And I'll show you a little bit more about this paper later on. And some other papers looking at the virtual reality for the learning. This is the second highest cited paper. And social media for e-learning in Libyan, okay? So this is a student from Libya, and etc. So some other figures you can see from Google Scholar, the number of citations. So in here, it tells me my citation around 3,625. Consider my age that I've been, I got my PhD in 1993, so close to 30 years. Actually, it's not very high if you consider it. So age index can tell me in here is 27, and I-10 index, it means that for those papers you have been cited over 10 times, is 81. And then, well, for those papers, it has been since 2015, then how many times of citations, etc. So it's a very interesting, well, indication that how much people are looking into this one particular author. What are the papers that are most cited? And also you can also reorder it and take a look at the latest papers, etc. So they also show you some of my co-authors. Well, Go Ong Sing, he is from Malaysia. Currently, he's a professor in the university over in Malaysia. Patrick Wong, he was a student over in New South Wales and graduated from there, but working as a practitioner in the industry on oil and gas. Jacinda is from Thailand. This one's working. Warwick is working in the government. And then Dr. Main actually is from Burma and he's working in the Middle East, etc., etc. So you can find a lot of information. Oh, Japan Lee. Japan Lee actually is interesting. He is from China. Currently, he's working in Amazon, okay, in Seattle. So I'm really proud and really glad to see the success of my students. Well, similarly, you can take a look at the others. Well, IEEE Explore. Now look that in here, you get a lock in here. So what it means is, well, I'm not really accessible to that. The reason behind it is when I log into this page, I did not sign in, etc. So IEEE papers are behind the paywall. So what it means is, well, the papers, strictly speaking, you need to pay unless you have the subscription through your university or through some other societies, etc. Some others, well, the Scoopers. Well, Scoopers is important because later on I'm going to share with you, well, how Scoopers will provide some other indications, well, of the metrics in addition to the just simply citations and H factors we have seen earlier on. So in this case, well, Scoopers recognize I have 200 papers, well, partly because Scoopers started a little bit later. So some of my early papers may not have been included in there. And also not necessarily all of them are within the field that I have published in the venue. Okay, so those were at the beginning part. I may come back to take a look at some of those information again. So before I go on to the main part of our talk, looking at writing, planning, and also creating impact for the paper. But I'll come across this quote. Well, to live is to choose, but to choose well, you must know who you are and what you stand for, or where you want to go, and why you want to get there. So it's an interesting, well, quotation. Well, it's really asking you more questions that, well, how you live well, well, where you want to head. And this one is from Kofi Annan. At one time, he was the United Nations Secretary General, and also get a Nobel Prize for Peace Prize in 2001. So I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, and I want to line it up well with our topic for today. Well, how do I write a paper with impact? So maybe I look at it this way. So I would say that, well, earlier on you say to live is to live well. And in here I would say that you communicate. I would say that, well, when you write a paper, the main objective is to communicate. And you want to communicate, you must write. Okay, so this is one of the difference between ourselves and the other part of the living animal kingdom. Okay, no doubt they have their means of communication, but none of them are able to write. Okay, so if you want to write a paper with impact, then you must know a few things: who you are, and who will read your paper, and what you are writing, and where you want to submit, and why you want to go to get there. Because you must bear in mind that it's not saying that you submit and definitely it's going to be accepted. So it will only be having impact. Well, no doubt that everyone will want to be on the best part of the world, but unfortunately, well, not necessarily. Well, a lot of situations and factors may affect that as well. So I rather ask all these questions before that we want to answer those questions that for the talk or for the talk today. So I come back to take a look. Well, the title of my talk is, well, we talk about planning, we talk about writing, you talk about creating impact, and it's mainly about the research papers. So I have already answered the first question. Why should we write a research paper? So we're going to take a look at that. So impact, I'm going to define it. So as I said, I'm not teaching you. This is not a teaching course, a writing course. I believe all of you are able to do that, and also plenty of materials you can look into that. And then I try to give you some suggestion on in terms of the planning. So all these are just based on experience in my own opinion. So go back to the question of why do we write? We have already seen the statement earlier on. The reason we write is because we want to communicate. So again, one is communication. You have something in your mind, you have some ideas, well, you have some results you want the world to know. So in our day and age, well, we don't use paper and pen anymore, but we go onto the keyboard, you type it, and then you try to publish it. And then, well, you got to make sure, well, the one who is reading, well, what you have written, understand what you're trying to say. So in other words, from the impact point of view, well, so you see a number of elements inside here. So really, for what you think inside here, are they able to create some kind of impact? Well, what your idea, your results, are they significant? Well, are they able to make a change? Well, from the reader's point of view, are you helping them? So when you put them into, well, on the paper with ink and a pen, or nowadays we use a keyboard, well, the question is, are you able to represent, well, accurately, concisely, and also that is able to be readable, well, by the reader? And then, well, from the reader's point of view, am I able to really 100%, well, I understand what you're trying to say? So after all, this is what communication is all about. So come back to papers then. So I can see that from a different stage of life you're in, or maybe in your career, then I would say that the first part is you write a paper because it is part of the training. In particular, well, with reference to the students. As a matter of fact, you have been doing that even if you're undergraduate, where you write an assignment in a way that you are communicating. You have to, well, you have to relate and you want to articulate, well, your ideas. So this is the part of the training. You need to keep on writing. You gain experience in the publications or process. Again, this is an important part, well, because you need to understand, well, how and where, well, for you to publish your papers. And then, well, to validate your results and findings from peers in the discipline. Well, in our scientific, well, environment nowadays, well, we rely on the system, what we call the blind review. So what it means is, well, you rely on this situation that whereby your papers, well, your ideas, well, your results are going to be validated, well, by your peers, well, supposed to be, well, the expert also in the areas, so that they can provide you some feedback, and then so that ultimately, well, maybe being published in the journals or in the conference. So this is, well, what is the whole purpose in terms of our academic and research process. And also, more importantly, if you got a paper published, so that means that you are able to establish your credential and also recognition, well, in the research field. Now, of course, it's quite unlikely just because one or two papers you're able to do that. Well, it might take time. Although, well, when we take a look at sometimes some of the papers, you see that they have been cited, well, hundreds of thousands times. Well, say for example, fuzzy logic, fuzzy theory, so that is an example. Well, everyone, well, can't get away from those papers. But then again, well, not necessarily every paper can do that. You have limitations on that. So that's why people are looking at the citations. And also, more importantly, I see that your writing is able to open up the channel, open up the, well, the discussion. You're able to do the networking. You're able to find people working on a similar field and give you the opportunity to work together, to collaborate, and then also to get the other results as well. And also fundamentally, well, whatever we do, well, we always say that contribution to knowledge. That's exactly what a PhD is supposed to be, contribution to knowledge. And then, well, unfortunately, well, it might place a lot of, I have to admit it, well, it also put a lot of pressure, well, on the academic as well. Even on the student, the same thing as well. I have seen students coming to the end of the PhD, they're getting so stressed because they're saying that, well, oh, I haven't got my paper accepted, I'm not able to graduate. But unfortunately, well, this is what happened. I'm not saying that, well, this is good or bad, but this is the fact. Same thing applies to the academic. Well, I look around, well, to my colleagues. I remember the days when I first started, nobody talked about how many papers to publish. So we just publish for whatever we think is right, or the right thing to do. But now people, well, try to put so many of the quantitative assessment of the papers. Again, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but this is the fact of life. So we can take a look, well, well, one of the articles I come across, well, this one is quite some time ago now, in September 2018. So what it's saying is too much academic research is being published. Now, on one hand, well, you have already observed, well, the statement I made earlier on, why people publish the research paper is part of the training, well, it's part of your academic expectation, your job, and all those things. Well, on the other hand, well, from the publishers' point of view, there might be a scenario that, well, we are facing the difficulty that too many papers being published. If you read, well, in here, there is a crisis in academic publishing, too much pressure on the top journals, too many books with marginal, well, quality, and then the rise of the predatory journals and publishers, well, low and marginal quality research, and tremendous pressure on the academic worldwide to publish. This is what you have heard what I said earlier on. We even come to the point that the Review of Higher Education, a highly respected academic journal, to temporarily suspend submission due to a backlog of more than 2 years. Well, worth of articles awaiting reviews or publication. So what it means is now we're beginning to have a vicious circle. On one hand, we have so much pressure on people to publish. But on the other hand, well, you heard that we are saying that our system is based on peer review. And then for those reviewers, I would say all of them are voluntary while doing this job. Well, they got no pay for that. And then, well, so you just have two sides. They themselves have to publish a lot. On the other hand, well, if they are involved with this voluntary work of reviewing papers, editorial roles, well, how much time they have if you have a lot of these papers. And also everyone wants to publish on the top journal. So this is the issues we're facing. So, and also there's another reason for that. Well, I'm not too sure is this common in India, but I have observed it getting quite common in Australia, in some of the universities try to push this one as well. The reason behind it is at one time the government, well, tied their funding to the number of PhD completion. So in other words, well, for the university, they might have some financial driving force for them to push out as many PhD as possible. So instead of just simply going through the traditional way, well, they just simply, well, get the paper published as many as possible. And there's one pathway called the thesis by publication. And then, well, they just simply put some of these papers together and then say, oh, this is good enough for thesis. Unfortunately, well, the way I look at it, well, although this has been available for a long time, but really, well, when this was original setup is a lot of time where we want to give people some kind of honorary position. And then some people, they have been working in his field, who is already expert, well, in his or her research field, already published a lot in top journals. And then we recognize, well, the efforts, well, by recognizing those papers, then we put together as a thesis, and then they get the degree for that. So they will save them the time, well, for spending, well, 3 or 4 years full-time research, well, again, well, because they have already been in the field. But suddenly, well, some universities find out this is an easier way for them to get a student, well, completed. So they still enroll it in a PhD and then publish a few papers. And then by the end of it, they put in the papers together. Now, I'm not saying that all of them are wrong. Okay, don't get me wrong. So it's a valid pathway. Well, we do accept it is. But then again, well, it is not just because you got papers and then you got, well, the PhD. That's what I'm trying to say. It needs to have the quality. Anyway, we're coming back to the situation that, well, that is exactly why we are facing, well, so much pressure. So, and there's another comment. No one knows how many scientific journals are there, but several estimates point to 30,000 with close to 2 million articles being published each year. That's just quite a lot. So in that case, well, then you come back to the question now. Okay, no, you still need to write a paper. You understand, well, why you want to write the paper. So that's why I add on to saying that, okay, you try to have some kind of impact. So my observation, this is already said already, the university management and governments are focusing on the global ranking, so to justify the expenditures and the investment. So also they need the quantifiable measurements. So this is the one, well, is the publication. And then the number and the venue of publication have become the goal and ends of postgraduate studies because of the thesis by publication. So what I'm trying to say is now people looking at publication for the sake of publication. So it is not sufficient just to say N papers published, but also other factors like the citation, H-index, impact factors, well, ranking, journal, etc. So I've already mentioned briefly about citation and H-index. So let's come back to the fundamental question: what is the impact now? My opinion is, well, it all depends on how you look at it. So if you look at the definition of impact, the word, you just simply say that a marked effect or influence. So it could be for different people to be influenced. Someone looking at a movie feel that he or she is very moved by the romantic story in there, and then the lovers, they die for one another. So the girls was crying her eye out. Well, she feel a lot of impact by the movie. But then again, the boyfriend sitting next to her, well, have no, he's wondering. He's just enjoying the popcorn. He doesn't understand why the girlfriend next to him is crying. On the other hand, well, they watch a science fiction movie, and the boy was so excited looking at all the latest gadget and fighting on the screen. And then, well, the girls was discussed, well, why you guys always like so much violence. So in other words, well, impact can be different things. Well, to the same thing for the same movie. One is seems to have a lot of impact for him or her. The other one is, oh, I don't feel nothing. So in this case, we have to understand impact is all depends on how you look at it from different viewpoints. Of course, from the author's point of view, I would say the impact for him or her, of course, is able being published? Is it being cited? And I would say it's very important that are you able to continue further work on that? Because, well, really, your research should be able to open up further research. And that's how we do a continued contribution to knowledge. And then from the reviewers and the publishers' point of view, so on one hand, well, they themselves are also facing a vicious circle. On one hand, they would like to have as many publication submission as possible, because that will really strengthen their standing. So because by doing that, they can say that okay, the acceptance rate is very low because they only select a small number of paper being published, and that's one of the criteria looking at how good is a conference or a journal. Of course, another one is the other one impact factor. How many of those are being cited? So. But then again, well, if they have too many, well, then the quality may drop, and also, well, they also need a lot of reviewers to do the job as well. So from their point of view, is that they would like to have good papers who are going to the conference or the journals, so they're good enough to be accepted. And more importantly, those papers must align with the objective of the journals and the conference. And then from a general public point of view, now as you heard, if you have to download a paper from IEEE, if you are not a member of society, or maybe you don't have subscription, you have to pay individually. And some of them are very expensive. Well, I would say not too expensive, $30-something. But there are some others, value, say for example, some industry papers like Gartner's. If you download the paper, it could cost $1,000 or so, very expensive. So in this case, is it worth the money? So the impact is, from the reader point of view, is this paper having any impact, on the work I do? Well, am I having any impact by reading the paper? Then the answer is, is it useful? Is it good for comparison? Why sometimes I download your paper because I see your result, how it compared to mine. Is it good enough that I can reference your paper? So really the word impact will be quite different. Now I know that, there are some quantitative figures, which I have already said earlier on. So there's another way to look at it. But I just want you to see the impact. We could mean different things to different people. So how to create the impact? I would say ultimately, the first thing is go back to the content. Because you write something that you really need to write with some reason, okay? And it should be good enough to be written. Well, why you want to write it? As I said earlier on, no doubt you have pressure that you need the paper to get graduated, you need the paper to keep a job, but the ultimate goals for our academic purpose is really contribution to knowledge. Well, is it really valuable? Is it valid? Okay, you have some very important answers to the question to answer. Then the next one is a presentation. Well, how is the content being presented? So in other words, how well is the writing? So no doubt, on one hand, writing academic papers and research papers are different from writing a novel. On the other hand, I still see that the same thing, because your purpose is to communicate. Well, I always tell my students that when they write the paper, try to present something, always try to do it as if you are telling a story. Because you want the reader or the audience to be attracted to what you are saying, they read what you are, to make sense to them. So you want them to read in such a way that they're looking forward to take a look at the next sentence or the next chapter or the next section. So you don't want to let them off your hook. So this is very important. So this is the structure you have created. So I always tell them that you must have some link on from one chapter to another chapter, so that people anticipate what's coming up next. So your writing style, now this is the one that you cannot really have it overnight improved. You really have to continue, learn, and also get people give you the opinion, etc. You need to be concise, you need to be readable. There are some quantitative assessment on how to read the readability of the paper. You can go through that one, but ultimately you just simply have to learn. And another way to learn it is really you have to read a lot. So you see, for those those papers you really like it, then really you can learn, well, what are the main things that you find they are good. And I'll come back to the point, the value of publication. This will have impact, well, this will have a consequences of the impact of your work. Obviously, people looking at the impact factor of a journal, what it means is, well, how many times those papers within the journals are being cited in the last 3 years. So those are some quantitative measurement. But it does not necessarily mean that your paper will get that figures, because that is only average numbers. You have to bear in mind on that one. So I would say that, well, no doubt it's good, but you must also bear in mind that if it is a very prestigious venue, a conference or a journal, you need to be prepared that the acceptance rate is going to be low as well. Okay, so you have to judge between the two. No doubt that you can submit to the top journal in the world, but then again, the chances of being accepted, well, is not too high, then why you waste your time? So might as well, you need something to be appropriate. You can also have some other ways to doing your work. You're just simply sharing it, well, on the blog, which is not referenced. So come back to the question. Well, as an author, so the impact and brought along by the paper, obviously the first one will be being accepted, because this is going to be added on to your CV. You have another publication. Implicitly, you also talk about your credential. People recognize you as a researcher in the area. And well, how is it going to be good? If you come back with a review saying that the minimum correction or maybe comments, so it means that you have the impact that your work has been endorsed. So you know that, well, you have done sufficient work, that you gain the confidence and the trust of the reviewer. And of course, well, in the long term, well, it's a citation that counts. How many people refer to your papers? And also, it can help you to lead to subsequent publications. So I always tell my students is, well, don't put all the eggs in one basket. Now, sometimes you might, well, have quite a fair bit of results, but don't overload the reader with all the results. Partly it also help you as well. You can open up, well, to another paper. And of course, well, your recognition may come in as some of the receiving some of the awards, best papers, best presentation. So again, if I go back to this one, I've already mentioned about those figures, like the citation. So in here, they talk about all my papers in Google Scholar. They have received 3,625. The H-index, well, those are the number of papers received minimum numbers of 27. I got 27 papers, minimum received 27 citations. So you multiply the figures, you know how many we've been there already. So, and then you can take a look in terms of some other indications. Scopus. So Scopus, well, I know this is the one beginning used by all the universities. So you have some information like the ID and all those things. So these are some of the names I've used. Okay, C.C. Fung, Lan, C.C. Fung, Chun Che, and all those things. So this is what they have, or they consider 200 papers within the repository. Bear in mind, because well, they only have some of the papers at the later stage. So it tells me within those papers, well, 1,159. I'm not the highest cited. Even looking at the citation H-index, this one is lower compared to Google, because the number of papers being inside here is lower. So you can see this is the number of documents that have been published over the years. So obviously, since my retirement, the gradually dropping now. So the citation is accumulative. Well, there's a yearly one, and it's come down. And then we'll take a look at those papers. This is the one I mentioned. It was published in 1993. And this paper, well, initially, well, I don't really have a lot of citation. And then I come to 2011 or so, well, more or less these few years, well, have the highest, and then will gradually come down. But it's still cited recently. So on that basis, I'm quite pleasantly pleased that I believe I was showed as my supervisor, who is up in heaven now. And well, he should be pleased to see it. And I know that actually this is his second highest paper. My supervisor has an H-index of 78. 78. In other words, 78 of his paper have a minimum cited 78 times. And I'm really pleased to know that this is his second highest cited paper. So this is my second cited paper. I'm going to use this paper. So Cockway actually, he was my first big student from Curtin University. And then, well, Linda Lee, well, she is from Malaysia. And Karen, actually, she's working as a researcher in Australia as well. This paper was published in 2010. And it has been cited 280 times. And you can see that the graduate. The reason behind it is this was one of the earlier papers make use of this model called the structure equation modeling approach. So that's why this has been cited. And similarly, well, for our paper, why this one was being cited, because this was my PhD work. And then when we look at the economic dispatch problem using a new methods, well, actually this is more like a optimization problem called simulated annealing. Well, this approach actually also being used now extensively, well, in a lot of the latest computational intelligence, AI approaches as well. So coming back on this one that leads to another, well, index that whereby I can share with you. It is called the field weighted citation impact. So this is the one that again come back from Scopus, and some of the university beginning to use this one. So looking at a score of 1.0, that means that the article is cited as you would have expected. So break that 1.0, that means it's better than expected. Less than 1.0 is underperformed. So really, the university is looking at the papers, how well they are with creating the impact. So the important point is, well, we come from the Scopus data. So only those papers from 1996, well, are being counted. So in my case, well, my most cited paper, 1993, well, wasn't included. So because it's included field of normalizations, theoretically, the score should be a better indication. So this is what they claim. But unfortunately, we do not really know what is the theory, well, the formula they have used well, behind it. Just like in Google, well, search, no one knows, well, the search algorithm, because I know people can play around with that one. But nevertheless, well, this is the one they use, well, as an indication. In my case, if I take a look at the paper, so this is the one, well, because although this is not my most cited paper, this is my second cited paper, published in 2010. So according to Scopus, in here, you say cited 138 times. So what is the data I receive from there? So if you click in this one, you will be able to see the abstract of it. You can also see how many times cited in Scopus. And this is the figures, 4.95, okay? It's not extremely high. I must say, I've seen some people my student keep, Kwai Wong, he had one paper with another guy in Singapore. I think he got 18 or so. So, but what does it mean? Honestly, I don't know. But that's simply some figures coming up by Scopus and people are using it. So you have already heard about the citations. So again, Scopus tells me, well, over the years, well, these are how many times the paper had been cited over the years. Okay, so the most is around 30 times, well, in 2019. So nevertheless, well, what I'm showing you is that some of these indication, people using it as a comparison. So you consider, well, this is on the top 4% or so of this paper, and the field cited impact is a 4.95. So now this is the one, enough talking about the papers and the author. There's a reader. Okay, so a paper have an impact. So it means that, well, the paper is relevant to the research. Then, well, but most importantly, I must say that, well, are your paper able to get the attention of the reader? And also it provides some aspects, well, which enlightens me and my work. So in other words, well, are you able to teach the reader something? Or from the reader point of view, can I learn something from it? Has it been cited, recommended by reference? So this is the figures you have seen from the earlier part. So what is the fuss all about is really, to you, if you just simply want to learn from it, it doesn't really matter. But what it means is, well, for those citations, there's simply more people are recognizing, endorsing it. So that's why catching attention. But ultimately, it's really how useful is the paper for you. And as a reviewer, then I would say that the paper with impact, I just simply say that, well, this paper should have a relevancy to the theme and scope of the publication, which could be a conference, could be a journal, could be a transaction. And more importantly, you should read well. Well, you should know language is clear enough. Well, the format is following the requirement, the diagram, the size of the fonts, or the structure, the references. All these are important. Because if you're not able to meet all those requirements, the chances you could even be rejected, even though that you might have excellent results. But then again, if you do not conform to the requirements, you are not even creating any impact as far as the reviewers are concerned. So the main point is you still need to answer the question, what are the contributions you have made in your papers? So in this case, well, I consider, well, the basic and the essential qualities of a paper of impact. First of all, it should be accurate, they should be factual, they should be insightful, they should be novel, they should be innovative, they should be creative, they should be significant and impactful. So to answer the question, impact. So what does it mean by all these terms I've made? I believe that ultimately the most basic part is you do not publish for the sake of publishing. Unfortunately, some people are doing that. So that's why I lead on to my other involvement on the technical program integrity committee. Because we do spot papers, but they are machine generated. They are plagiarism issue. Most of you are fully aware what does it mean by the plagiarism. So ultimately, I believe that for us as scientists, academics, engineers, when you report, it must be true. Okay, you do not really make up the data. So you require the honesty, you require the ethics. Well, ethics is another topic I would really like to talk about. You need to have the integrity. All these are the foundations of science and the knowledge. Without that, actually you have no use of thousands of papers. You will see the consequences I'll show you later on. I will just repeat this over and over again. Never, 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 never. Never falsify the data, never falsify the results, never falsify the methodology. You're supposed to report what you have done faithfully and truthfully. Any wrongdoings could be dealt with a severe implication. It could be extraction of a paper. It happened in Explore. I think I may be able to show you later on. Your loss of your reputation, and maybe even loss of job as well. And maybe even legal implications because of someone may receive the money when doing the research from the research grants and not doing the job properly. So this is the case in the IEEE Explore. You may come across some of these. If you look at a paper with the title, you may think quite relevant. Then when you look in the Explore, you see a notice. After careful and considered review of the content of the paper, a duly constituted expert committee, the paper has found to be in violation of the IEEE principles. So therefore it's being retracted, okay? A lot of time we also inform the employer of this issue. Well, this is quite a few years ago, 2013, German education minister quits over PhD plagiarism. So you will catch up even the guy, well, he's as a minister in the government. And the interesting part is, this is the second case. Actually, there was another premier, not premier, I think the president of the university also have a similar situation. So it needs to be novel, innovative, and creative. So how do you know that you are that? Well, the answer is that you really need to have read a lot within the field so that you know where you stand. And your paper should have made contribution to knowledge with either new results, new approach, and new methodology, and new understanding of the problem. I myself, serving on the conference quality committee, we have come across papers. Well, we say that we know that actually no difference compared to just undergraduate work in the lab. Just simply run some experiment and give a result. Yes, no doubt from the format point of view, it's acceptable as a work, but really there's no new result. Okay, so it's because anyone can plug in the numbers to a simulators, plug in whatever teaching module, neural network, whatever, you get some result. But that is not really, a contribution from our expectation point of view. So it is understandable many people are published daily, so you need to do the best that you can, okay? Because obviously what it means is you're not able to read every paper in the world because you have read earlier on, but you just do the best you can. So a lot of time we write the paper as well to the best of the authors, under knowledge that this is that we see that this is our work. So in a way it's true because you are not able to understand every papers. Nevertheless, you should publish the paper in where your submission goes. So what it means is that you have to take a look at the value of your publication. It could be a journal, it could be conferences. So at least you do your background work. Take a look at some of the other papers. Make sure that your work is not duplicating other people's work. You don't want to reinvent the wheels. So this is what happened in another article, especially in the case of the COVID-19. Well, you got a tsunami of paper. This one actually is referring to tsunami of papers. So really making the scientific work is not going to work because it's just take an example. Well, this guy, in the past that he'd been reading the paper, trying to keep himself updated, but just too many, more than 4,000 alone in a week. But I'm not keeping up. So in other words, you're beginning to defeat the purpose. You're not able to keep up the latest finding because there are too many papers being published. And then, by one estimate, the COVID-19 literature published since January have reached 23,000 and is doubling every 20 days, among the biggest explosion of scientific literature ever. So it is really just all these numbers are good? No, because not necessarily every one of them are making significant impact or even useful, just because they try to ride on the bandwagon. So significant and impactful. So ideally, you should have made long-lasting impact and making significant contribution. As I said, I'm really proud of the fact that if my paper, our paper published in 1993 is being still cited in 2020, well, I think we have done our part. So nevertheless, it's unlikely that all the publication. Having said that, you can also see a lot of my papers also got 0 citation, okay? Well, we got to live with it. So at least, you should know where your publication, where your papers stand against other people's work. So you'll be able to make critical assessment of your work. And just don't follow for shallow and hollow claims. This is one of the things I always comment on my students at the beginning part of the study. that they try to really make a lot of claims. So this is our result is the best. Is all the things. There's no way you can say your result is the best because you can only compare. You can only say that you are better in comparison to so and so. Okay, so those are the simple things. So now answer the next question. Well, where to publish? So in IEEE, well, we have a number of venues where you can publish different format as well. It could be a transaction in journals, although they're quite similar. There are a lot of, sometimes they're considered the same, but nevertheless, there's some subtle differences. Also some letters as well. A lot of papers are being published, well, in the conferences. So conferences will appear as a proceedings and they're reviewed with a specific time frame. They either be reject or accept. And also there are limitation on number of pages. Okay, you have to bear in mind and follow the requirement. So you have a venue to present and discuss and getting to know one another as well. So this is the main purpose of the conference. It's not just simply you publish a paper, but you also the opportunity for you to listen to other people's. You also need to network, and then you can establish some collaboration, hopefully. So, of course, in today's a lot of virtual, there may be limited opportunity to do that, but nevertheless, you're still able to meet other people. So you could be invited to publish in journals, and but the only thing is, well, there are costs involved of the registration fee and also maybe travel. For the journal, there are periodicals or publications. So they focus on specific, well, discipline of areas. In the case of IEEE, a lot of times, well, you do have the technical committee looking over different aspects of interest as well, even under the same journal. So a lot of time, the publication will go through a few rounds. So you can have meticulous peer review process. They really go through, you'll expect the questions from the journal review. Normally, you should expect much more thorough compared to just a normal conference paper. Sometimes they may have some special issues as well. Well, there are two ways, two types now. This is what I mentioned earlier on. Nowadays, because citation is important, so there are some mechanisms you can go through what we call the open access journal. What it means is, well, those papers are freely available to anyone, well, in public. Only thing is, well, they will charge the author for the overhead or for the cost. Well, of course, well, if the money go to non-profit organization like IEEE, it will be okay. But unfortunately, there are a lot of organizations, they will try to make money from this mechanism. So they expect you to pick up roughly maybe $1,000 or $2,000 or so. And then, well, you think they put into that, but really there are a lot of dodgy practices of those journals. Well, we can always look at some of the indications. Say, for example, they do not really give you constructive comment. And then, well, they just accept your paper very quickly and then not much comment on it. You take a look at the composition of the committee's members. But that's why I say that always try to do a bit of background work for those names you're not familiar with. And then, well, those are some of the common issues, problem with those open access. So don't just think that open access is good, because some of them may be just out there just trying to get your money. Well, on the other hand, then go to more traditional ways, but more established like IEEE. So they do not really charge you the money, except if they are going to open access format. So coming to the conference. So for the conference, I'm going to speed up a little bit. I know that I'm already, how's my timing go? So is the timing go to one hour? Can someone confirm how much time I have?
Hello?
Yeah, how much time do I have?
Sir, you can go for 10 more minutes, sir.
I can go on, is it? Okay then.
Yeah.
All right, I think I have maybe around 10 or 20 slides more. I just finish off.
Okay.
So how do you select the conference? As I said, I look at it mainly because of my past experience in the conference quality committee. So the first question is, well, you make sure that it's relevant to your work. Now, some of the IEEE conferences are the top conferences in the world. I think like pattern recognition, some of the image processing, some of those journals. They're the most cited. Well, I'm just speaking from my discipline on AI and computer science, etc. I'm not too sure about the other engineering discipline, but you should know it yourself. So on one hand, it's good, but it also means that it will be difficult to get in. Okay, but then again, conferences normally you have more chances compared to a journal because they have more papers being published, unlike a journal. So this comes to the next question. You need to check what is the acceptance rate. Okay, well, of course you can try. There's nothing wrong. Well, if they reject it, well, provided if their reviewer are able to give you some good review and help you to refine your paper, you can go into some other revenues, some other revenue as well. So another most important question is, are the proceedings going to be indexed? Well, because if it's indexed, so when people look for the papers, you've got a chances to be known. If it's not indexed, then I would say no, okay? Well, what do you expect to get from the conference apart from just publishing the paper? So this is where you look at the organizers, looking at the committee members, well, who are the co-organizers, well, who are the keynote speakers, because you expect to hear from them. Maybe some additional tutorials, workshops. So those are the additional questions you may want to take a look. Because, well, it's not only just simply writing and publishing a paper. You get a chance to create the impact. The impact could be, you get an opportunity, you can interact with the audience. They may ask you a question on the spot. You're able to discuss with them. You can share an answer. Maybe sometimes they even give you some suggestion as well. Okay, it's not uncommon. I've seen audience, well, in a presentation, you get a student presented a paper. Not necessarily try to embarrass a student, but sometimes the audience try to point the student or the presenter to some other way to do the things because, well, some of the work, similar work has been done. So these are the main reasons you want to publish in a conference. But then again, I also, well, received some comment asking the question, okay, can I publish the paper, my work as both journals and the conference? The answer is yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, really, from IEEE point of view, well, there's no restriction on that. But no, in the sense that you cannot publish the same paper, well, in two venues. Otherwise, you become a double dipping. And also, well, from citation point of view, it's no good. So we also have some certain guideline with IEEE, well, for you to publish a conference paper into journal papers. So we do have our operational manual, and we have a specific guidelines and policy on that. So we are saying that you cannot republish it without substantial addition, technical content or material. So that's why it's very important. If you intend to do that, make sure you have enough additional work being put in. And a lot of time, it's also not uncommon that you list the differences between your journal papers to your previous conference paper, okay? Although how much is difference is quite subjective, very hard to say. So it's not unusual that you specify it, okay? So you just simply say that, oh, okay, so sometimes depending on the papers. For a conference paper of 8 pages or more, a summary explaining the differences. A lot of times the conference paper are smaller, 4 papers, 6 pages, and then you submit to a journal paper 10 to 12 pages, then obviously you have quite a fair bit already. So the text and figures can be exactly the same, so that's not a problem. Well, it's not considered as a double publishing, okay? But there should be some slightly differences, well, in terms of what are the overall contribution they have made. So you can submit at the same time as well, okay? But however, the journal version should not have been appear in the Explore or at the time of submission of a conference of that paper. What it means is you can have a journal after a conference, okay? Well, but then again, you cannot really have in other words, you should not submit as a conference paper if a journal has been published, okay? I make it clear. So you can have the journal after the conference, but not the other way around. So it's a responsibility for the author to ensure any copyright commitment as well, because sometimes you might publish the conference in the other venue. So now come to the last part, the other part now, we're coming to the end very quickly, that are looking at the planning. So I have proposed some kind of plans, well, if you want to write and submission papers. So I would say that first of all, you have a research plan. In other words, well, you need to look into your whole research strategy, your outlook, a couple of years down the track of where you want to be. And then you need to have a publication plan. As I have said, everyone wants to publish in the top journal, but it's not necessary. Well, you need to do that. And also not necessarily you can get all the paper accepted. So you really need to phase it out. I would always suggest that, well, have a couple of conference paper, get it accepted. Then if the materials are good enough, then you can work together, put it in the journal papers. And also have a networking plan. So what it means is, well, you can have people who work in similar areas. So you can have people counter-check your work, helping you, proofreading your work. And also maybe you have co-authors together. So by doing that, you can increase the number of publications. And also, it's also very important. Well, in today's talk, I don't talk about grants, whereby I have given quite a number of other talks on grant and proposal writing. And I would say also important in writing the grants. because the approach writing the grant are quite different from writing a technical paper. It really gives you a better understanding of what you're doing, because the grants, I always say that you need to address the audience are different from your audience in your technical paper. A lot of time they are not the expert in your field. So you really need to, well, explain much more clearer and simpler to those people. So by doing that, you help you understand your own work. And also need to have management your time and resources, etc. So when I talk about the research plan, really, you can go all the way back to your time you start your PhD research. You make your initial proposal, you need to do your ongoing 3 years work. You may work on another couple more years as the postdoc, and then you go into either full-time researchers or academic. Even if you go into industry nowadays, it's not unusual. Industry people also write a lot of paper. Well, we run a World Wide Web conference in Perth a couple of years ago. Well, we see a lot of paper from Microsoft research, well, from Google, from Facebook, but they all come in. And then you go into application of admission. So you need to prepare your proposal. During your course of study, you need to write your proposal for the confirmation of candidature. You need to provide, well, milestone. You need to have regular publication. All these are part of your publication work together with your research work. After your completion of a PhD, you need to work on your postdoc. And then you may have an academic appointment. You may have industry appointment. You may even want to work on your own startup. You still need to write. You need to still to write to communicate. Well, a white paper, you need to write the blogs and all those things. Let people know your work. Publication plan. Well, I would say that no doubt people always try to aim as many as possible, but I strongly against it. Don't publish for the sake of publishing. The reason I have a high number of papers is not that I really want it to be that way. Just because I have a high number of PhD students. And my purpose is really I want to help them, because they can only learn by publishing a paper. So you will see more or less all the papers. I never put myself as a, well, I have a few where I put myself as the first author, but majority of them, I really want them to take the lead. And also they're similar. Well, once answer the question of how many, then you need to how often you want to publish. And then where you want to publish, what you want to publish. Always come back to the question, make sure what you publish is worth to publish, okay? And then where to publish, we have already said, journals, conferences, etc. And maybe sometimes you would like to invite people working with you on the co-author as well. And after you do that, well, what are you going to do with it? So this is where the impact could be created. How you make it to be accessible, how you create some discussion on the social media, and working with your peer in a networking plan. Okay, so who are the other researchers working in the area? Well, they could be within your locations, within the other part of the world. So you explore the chances as well, any possibility to working with them. It could be a joint publication, joint research work, or if you are going into the publications, well, on the editorial boards, or maybe on the conference technical program committee. So you can exchange with the student as well. Well, if you got some PhD student with you, always think about the win-win situation, okay? You want to work with other people so that you can come up with some win-win results for both of you. I've already mentioned the grant. So you can have some joint grant application together as well, so that you can complement one another. You can have a compatible track record, and also you can make your application stronger because you have people having different good track records. But you need to work on the management of the low distribution, and especially the allocation of the money and the resources. And you also need to consider in terms of any potential IP. If you have an IP, then my answer is don't publish, because if you want to get your patents and all those things, so once you publish it, that's gone. You already put it in the public already. So possible involvement, well, of the legal department as well. Well, my university, well, used to have one department helping us to examine, well, the work. Is there any potential? At one time, one of my PhD students, we submit the work. They spend around a couple of $1,000, and then they come back and say, okay, well, it's good enough. That is from a third-party organization. So university pay for that money, and come back and say that, okay, well, the work is good, but it's maybe quite localized. So you may not have enough financial return, so as a continued investment by the university. So they just release, well, the copyright back to us. Okay, so these are some of the things that can be done. Management plan, you need to keep the balance. Well, keep the balance about your own time. Well, you need to really work out, well, the balance of your family life, of your own self. And also, if you're having a grant, you have to take a look in terms of the financial well, and resources. Well, even for the conferences, you need to involve of money because of the traveling, because of the registration fee, accommodation. And also more importantly, you need to maintain the relationship with your co-workers and the families and also the staff and all those things. And also more importantly, in my case, I have been involved with IEEE, and this gives me the tremendous opportunity that I can network, I can access to the resources, I can get to know the people as well. But you still need to strike the balance, okay? Don't overdo too much time. After all, it's only a voluntary organization. Now, finish off the well-looking Australian experience. The reason I have said so much is because some people may ask the question, okay, I mentioned about the venue, about the conference and the journal. Well, is there any guideline? As a matter of fact, in Australia, we do have one organization, well, that in the areas of the computer science and the information technology, they got an organization called CORE. And we have also another one called Australian Research Council. I'm going to briefly talk about these two. CORE stands for Computing Research and Education Association of Australasia. It's a formation, well, of all the head of school, well, in Australia, within the discipline of computer science and IT. So they try to, well, looking at assist advanced research in the areas. Okay, what I'm trying to say in here, I'm not going through all these things in here now. What I'm trying to say is they come up with some kind of ranking. So by providing the ranking, the people can determine, well, how relevant, well, is their conferences. So they have the conference ranking based on a number of indicators like the citation rate, paper submission and acceptance rate, visibility, and the research track record of the key people. So this is the one that they have, you're supposed to do the homework. Actually, you can pass the homework to this core organization. And then the highlight of these, well, conferences. They have a ranking of A star, whereby they're the flagship conference, the leading edge venue, A, B, C, well, other rankers, conferences, so, or unranked. So on one hand, this is a good indicator, but on the other hand, it's also bad in the sense that because, well, the university, they turn around and say that, well, if you're not going to an A star ranking university conference, I'm not going to fund you. So you got a problem as well. Because we know that if you are working on some leading edge emerging technology, not necessarily all of them are suddenly become an A-star conference. So you have limitation on that. And also, as I have said, you go to conferences not just because of the publication. You want to get to know other people. So there are some other factors involved. But nevertheless, this is something, well, we have used in Australia. Then finally, looking in the Australian Research Council. I mentioned why writing the papers with impact is important. Because in the Australian Research Council, they're looking at the parameters, not only with your grant application, they're also looking into ERA and EI. So ERA stands for Excellence in Research for Australia. This is the assessment of the organization you are with. This is not for individuals, but looking at the organization, university, research department. So they give them a ranking, well, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, that means that they are leading, top of the world. 4 is above world average. 3 is world average. 2 is below world average. 1 is well below world average. So obviously, if a research unit is being granted 5, well, he or she, well, they'll be very happy. Or minimum, they expect around 3. So if it's 2 or 1, you might stand the chances, well, either you've got to reduce support. So it's not a good thing, really, if you ask me. But nevertheless, well, that's how they look at it. And the other one is the engagement and impact. So the impact, this is the one relating to how the research is being translated or implemented, well, with a social benefit, okay? And then also they use some kind of a social recognition through the social media and all those things. So again, I'm not going through detail all this one because it is not really relevant to you guys. I just try to illustrate why writing with impact is important, because they could form part of the assessment on your work, not just simply because of the paper alone, not just because of the university. Rather, when you go for research grant application, that could be taken into account. Now, I'm not saying that it's over the case over your side, but I'm just using the Australian experience. So the ERA has been in place since coming to 10 years now, 2010. And then E&I, just the new things that come out in 2018. The first report is being published. Actually, they're available. And then between 19 to 20, that they conduct reviewing it. Okay, the next one will be 2024. So from the conference quality point of view, so we have a program called Technical Program Integrity Initiative. So this is the one that examining, well, the quality of the conferences. So we take a look at how the papers are being submitted. Are they fall into the scope of the conference and IEEE, and also the quality of the paper. What we do is we have a monthly meeting. We have around under 10 members from supposed to be expert of the members. And then we have highlighted maybe around 10% of our IEEE conferences. We need to go through the process. Then we examine, well, 10 sample papers. And then we also send to our outside vendor to take a look and examine the papers. So the main objective, we want to maintain the quality of it. So there are some questions and answers, because some people obviously is going to be very disappointed if the conference is not being accepted. And we explain all the rationale on the website. So again, well, this may not be relevant, well, to most of you, but nevertheless, I just want you to know the fact is, well, from IEEE point of view, well, we do consider the quality of the paper is very important to protect the brand, and also to protect the reader as well. So we want them to receive the reading from the papers are truly with impact and also with significance. So if they are found short of the quality, so they could turn out to be, well, the whole conference is not being accepted. Well, for the one you see for extraction, well, that is at the later stage. That is after they have published in Explore, then we find out the problem later on, and there will be individual papers are being extracted. So I finished all now, so I'm sorry that really I have quite a bit of overtime. So in summary, now, I can say that, well, you may agree with me that the ability to write and publish the papers is now a requirement in academic and the research career. And one should understand the drivers behind and the essential elements of a quality papers, well, with impact. And I've shared some of it. And you really need to consider others people's viewpoint. And I share with you some of the assessment metrics. And it's important to select, well, where to publish your paper. And also, well, the grant application requires the track records and publications and the papers with impact. Then you also need to plan strategically, well, for writing the publication. So thank you very much for your attention and the opportunity to share with you. And I wish you and your research, well, will produce, well, quality publications with impact, okay? Thank you so much. I'm going to stop now. So I pass the time back to you. I can take a look some of the chat.
Yes. Sir,
Okay.
we have a long list of questions from the audience. So shall I share a few questions in the chat window?
Okay, I'm looking at the chat window now. Okay, welcome all. Please keep your video disabled. So that is the one. Well, I'm just trying to look from the earlier one. Type your question below. Type your question below. Okay, how research is continued during the COVID days? Or what kind of support you're providing for research scholar from the university? Is there any specific impact on research program due to COVID? Now, it all depends on what is the discipline you're dealing with. Well, from my university, well, our students, they are all working on their computer and IT. There's not really a problem at all. Well, only some of those, if they have to work with some hand-on. Well, Australia, in our state, actually now at this moment of time, we are getting quite good. We are now actually going to the phase 5 of our reduction. So we're gradually, people are getting back on campus. So what we have done is, well, they have reduced, well, the contact as much as possible. Well, at one time, people, of course, they banned, well, completely. And then later on, well, they're being allowed to get back as long as they follow some guideline, registration, and social distancing, etc. So on the basis, I do not really see that much impact on that basis. Okay. Well, if a journal takes too long, well, more than a year to publish an article, is it recommended to withdraw the paper and submit it in another journal? Up to you. So that's exactly why I say that you need to decide where you want to submit your journal. Because you can see for yourself that most of the journal tell you when was the paper was being initially first submitted, and then eventually how it's being published. So in particular, if students they have a limited time on the PhD study, you may, so up to you. You have to decide. I cannot tell you really how much you want to publish in that journal. Please tell us the difference between SCI, SCIE, and SCI, Margo. Well, all these are different organizations, well, for the indexing. So I will leave it to you to examine for yourself, okay? As I said, well, I cannot cite, well, you just simply take a look, well, to do some Google search on this yourself, just as some indexing service. It is necessary for any kind of paper to include pie chart, bar diagram, graphs, of what is the need of it. No, I don't think that those are the important part, depending. Well, the answer is, well, you take a look, what are the common norms? Well, are those papers being published in the conference and the journals they're using? A lot of time they also have very clear guideline. Okay, I think this particular question is really quite trivial. I do not think that just because you got pie chart or bar chart, you're going to be either accepted or rejected. That is really minor. It's only presentation, really. Is it advisable to publish a paper in journal through international conference? After presenting paper in conference, some papers are sent for journal. This is the last part I have mentioned. Now I know that some conferences, they use it as I call it a bait. Okay, try to invite you come over because you can publish in journal, etc. Their relevancy, yes, that's okay. You have take a look at are those journal. Well, what is the status of those journals? Not just because the journal is a journal. As I said, there's so many journals nowadays. Well, sometimes it could even give you some damages for your reputation if you publish in those journals. Take a good look. What are those journals? Are they reputable? And also to make sure that, well, there should be some guideline. Don't think that you just finish a conference paper and then go to the journal directly. No, don't do that, okay? You cannot be the same. You must, well, as I've said, you must have some substantial addition on that. Okay, is there any other question? I think I answered most of the question, well, from the chat box now. Any more? Okay, let me take a look. I think, oh, I see there's some more coming down now, okay. Okay, so the next one. Next one is, some journals are asking disclosure agreement. Well, no potential conflict of interest. What does it mean? Okay. Now, sometimes depending on the journal, because, well, there's something called conflict of interest in the sense that, well, you might be on the reviewer committee. So just say, for example, I'm now in the process of reviewing some conference paper. One of the things they asked me to write in a disclosure, no conflict of interest. So say, for example, if I work on a certain university, I got to make sure that I'm not going to reveal those papers from my university. And strictly speaking, I shouldn't also be in reviewing paper of my close contact and all those things. Because the worst thing can happen. Because, well, let's put it this way. Because they're looking at citation, it's a number. So it's quite obvious, you know what I know, you can form a clique. You cross-citing one another. You boost up the number. But what does it mean? Know that we got a number, but when people start to look closely to it, people begin to see you're really having a gang, a cartel in there. So that is not a really good thing. So I would say that, well, just simply do the best you can. So I would say that, well, if disclosure agreement, just simply say that, again, depends what, well, I have explained what does it mean by conflict of interest just now already. Okay, wonderful. Pinpointing the principle of publication, good impact factor journals with more accurate insight. Very good, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you so much for your interest and attendance. Plagiarism removal is a hectic task. Well, suggest some standard plagiarism checkers too. In IEEE, well, we do have one plagiarism check to cross-check. And I think there's another one people use in the university, turn it in. Now, I strongly against using the plagiarism tool as a means to improving your paper. I know that it can be done this way. Now let's put it this way. If you think that the plagiarism output, well, is your guideline, then, well, it's very easy to play the trick. I send it there, plagiarism tools will pick up all those things, come back to me. I paraphrase those, change as much as possible, send it back again 2 and 4 3 times. I meet the deadline, I meet the requirement, go back. Is it really the way to do it? I doubt it, okay? But then again, well, it can happen, you'll get it through, but is it really helping you? I don't know. Ultimately, you still need to really do the best you can. Okay, so I call you some of the tools already. Unfortunately, the plagiarism, 2 of them, you're gonna pay, so depending organization. If you send to IEEE, and as I said, one of the process for us going through the technical program integrity committee is all the papers will check through the plagiarism tools. And you find out that a very high percentage of those papers have a high plagiarism index, indicating, well, the conference is not doing the job, and the chances we could reject the conference. Okay, as an author, should I give importance to the content or the presentation? I would say the presentation is a minimum, because if your presentation is not good enough, even you got the best content, then you're not going to get accepted. So let me repeat again. If you got the best content, if your presentation is bad, the chance you get rejected, because, well, the people think that, well, they look at it, well, English, no, I don't know, well, what you're talking about. But on the other hand, well, you got an excellent presentation, but the content is bad. Okay, it all depends how bad it is. Okay, so it is not doing, well, enough contribution. The reviewer's point of view, really, you got the best. I'll give you an example. One of my students, well, after he completed the thesis, I keep on asking him, well, give me the final draft, let me take a look, and then, well, before we send it through, he keep on saying, oh, I'll send it back to you. I'll send it back to you. Now, what he did is he sent it to the proofreader. And the proofreader helped him with all the grammatical mistakes come back to me. And then after he sent it to me, I read it for, well, for a few chapters, I throw it back to him. I said, look here, well, you've done a lot of work, but this is most grammatically corrected crap I have ever read. I said it in this word. I know that they may really hurt his feeling. But what I'm trying to say is, well, what you have shown me, the thesis is grammatically is right, no problem at all, because they pay money, well, to someone. But the one doing the proofreader is not doing the content for him or her, right? So they are just simply trying to dress it up, make sure there's no grammatical mistake. A lot of chances, those work may be just sent to one of those automatic grammar checker and then collect a couple $100, well, from the guy. I said that you really need to understand exactly what you're trying to say. So in the end, I help him out, and he got it through now. He is working in the university. So to answer your question, you did both, okay? But if your presentation is bad, the chances it's going to be rejected is pretty high. So what are the areas where we researchers need to work on to increase our percentage of publication in the Scopus or other reputed, well, journals? You know it yourself. If you have been reading your topics, well, long enough, well, you are the expert, okay? You are the expert. You should really know, well, what is really needed, well, in that particular field of research. What is the latest one? So you look at two possibilities. One possibility is looking at a very hot topic, like everybody is running into this sort of COVID-19 things, okay? Because, well, you may jump on a bandwagon, but the chances is, well, you may not be able to get a lot of impact because, well, you are not the leading, well, in that part. But if you're truly able to come up with some innovative ideas, okay, and then you're able to truly come up with a new suggestion, and then you have some insights, and then that will be able, so to answer the question, there's no shortcut. So you really need to know the question yourself, okay? So feedback link, I think that's about it, is it? I think I've already hit one and a half hour times already. You guys must be getting hungry for your lunch.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Actually, we still have a long list of questions. So we will forward the questions to our guest through email. So
only a question, I thought I answered all the questions on the chat box already.
No, sir, I have not pasted it. I have collected it and kept it separately. Still, we have some 10 more questions.
You can put an answer if you want to.
Sir, shall we do it offline, sir? I will mail the questions to you, and we will share it with all the participants along with the e-certificates.
Okay, see how it goes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It was a very lucid and comprehensive explanation on various aspects of the publication, the ethical values required, the true traits of a researcher. The session was, I hope it will be very useful for all people from all rungs of the research ladder, let it be a beginner or a research scholar or postdoctoral fellows or even highly experienced researchers. So the point that writing a paper is to communicate was stressed properly, and I'm sure it all engraved in our minds. And so thank you very much for being very approachable, and I really thank our faculty, Sai Krishnan sir, for requesting you and making this happen. And after this pandemic, if there is a possibility that you visit Chennai, we will be really glad to host you in person in our campus.
Thank you.
So we really hope that, and we really wish you all the best, and hope to see you as the director of IEEE Asia Pacific region soon.
Thank you. I hope your wish be done. Okay. Once again, thank you so much for the attendance, and it's really an honor and a pleasure for me. And I really like to go on to talk about this topic, but I know that there's a lot to talk about. But after all, well, I wish you luck, and I believe that you all will do well. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Okay. Yes, bye-bye again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.